for example, when I say the N-word, I know this is such like a huge... Like,
what is going on here, guys? What is going on here?
When I say the N-word and Bryson says the N-word, if I were to say it, it'd be wrong. I do not say it. I am careful not to say it. Not that I feel the urge to say it constantly, but
some more than some white people do. Yeah.
I find that so funny.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a word. You can say it whenever you fucking want. It's not a matter of what you can and cannot do.
Anyone can say the word. But,
you're allowed. There's nothing illegal about it. But
what gotta the consequences that come with that,
which are the black community and other people in who are allies of the community just won't want to be around you as much, and you're just gonna have to accept that. If you say it in your car and nobody, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? It's like, who the fuck cares? Nobody cares. Nobody's around. I don't really care what you say in the privacy of your own home. But if it gets out there, then you're on a public platform and it matters. And in that same sense, I don't think it's fair to conflate the experiences of a man and a woman in the same scenario. There's a lot of context to that. It's not just a gender issue. There's also how that woman was raised, how the expectations that were put on her, the expectations that were put on a man.
Alright, what up, you guys? I'm Bryson Smith.
And I'm Javin, and this is Etcetera. Yes, we're in this. We're gonna win this. We've got a chess set on our table, and it's very nice.
We've had that the past, 4 episodes.
And I like it. For the past few episodes, I've liked it, and I just wanted to announce that. Okay. So, I'm going to let you introduce the topic today, Bryson.
Right, so before I introduce the topic, subscribe, support us, follow us on all of our social media accounts in the description. Support Ralph the Goat God, because he's cool, and he's on TikTok and whatnot.
Yeah.
But today's topic is going to be toxic masculinity. And the reason why I wanted to bring this topic up is because, personally, I don't know how that guy feels, but I feel like society has definitely been feminizing men. I think that, yes, there is toxic men, and there are toxic women, but I would never say that all men are toxic. And I think anyone with a sane mind knows that all men are toxic. And I just don't agree with how society is making men feel like they're toxic and feminizing them. Candace Owens, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. I'll pop up a picture right now, but she recently did a video a couple weeks where she was talking about how... did you see, or did anyone here, because we have audience here, see the dude in One Direction? He recently posted it. He was wearing a dress on Instagram.
Harry Styles?
Yeah. Stuff like that. I think it probably was him.
It was probably Harry Styles.
Anyway, I did a video on that, and she was saying, when did it become attractive or cool for men to put on dresses? I mean, and to each his own, if you want to do that, that's cool. But I feel like society pushes that. And I just don't think that, and she said it herself, but I don't think that women generally are attracted to feminine men. It's always attractive when a woman is a woman and a man is a man. So I just wanted to go about in this video, I don't agree with the feminizing of men.
So, there's some noise in the background, and that's because it's not raining. It's just...
it's cool. It's ambiance, though, if they can hear it. I don't know if the mic picks it up,
It's ambiance. Yeah. Enjoy it. You're welcome. We planned it. It was for you. No, we just got a random pipe that's leaking.
Did you have anything to say?
I did, of course. Yeah.
Agree,
So,
disagree, or what are your thoughts on that?
Here's what I'm going to approach this. I think Bryson's going to say his opinions on toxic masculinity, and then I'm going to say my opinions on toxic masculinity. And when I do, it'll probably, man. Okay, another disclaimer. I am drunk. Bryson's probably, I don't know if you're drunk, but you're tipsy.
I'm fine.
He's fine. He's not even. He hasn't even consumed alcohol. It just turns into sugar in his body.
No, I am consuming alcohol, but I can handle this conversation though.
I can't, Bryson.
I'm just saying.
Ralph's wasted, so I have to pick up his slack. The point is, I'm gonna make up for. I don't know what I'm saying. Point is, I'm gonna contrast what Bryson says in all likelihood, because I don't agree with a lot of your sentiments on toxic masculinity.
I thought so.
But I do understand where you're coming from, and I don't think you're wrong in terms of ethics. I don't think you're wrong in how you treat people and how you view people, but I don't agree with your opinions of toxic masculinity. So before I start being like, Bryson, you're fucking wrong, I want you to say your whole opinion and we can try to discuss it. That was your whole opinion?
That was it. Okay. I feel like society as a whole is feminizing men. And I just happen to use Candace Owens and Homeboy from One Direction because that's like the latest shit that's been going on as far as toxic masculinity. And I agreed with Candace. And if I'm not a fan of Candace Owens, by the way. She'll say things here and there that I agree with, but I'm not for her at all. I feel like for the people who know who she is, kind of know.
I get that.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. It sounds familiar. You've in fact mentioned her before.
Yeah,
I'm just unfamiliar with her work. Mm-hmm. What I will say about toxic masculinity is I have a specific definition for it in my mind, which is no, masculinity as an idea isn't toxic, and in fact has changed over the years to mean many different things and many different civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt this wonderful podcast, but there's somebody playing with a remote-controlled auto car thing, and that was pretty remarkable. We've seen some weird shit while we record, and it's only while we record.
I know. I feel like when we're not recording, it's just normal.
It's just a normal suburban life. But anyway, point is, I think toxic masculinity is defined as the idea that masculinity is defined by certain masculine or toxic traits. So no, masculinity is pretty normal, and a lot of people value it, and there's nothing wrong with valuing it. However, if your idea of masculinity is defined by certain toxic things that aren't healthy or emotionally conducive, that is what I would define as toxic masculinity. Right. And I think that
I would agree with that too.
More than that, I think those toxic attributes are values that society perpetuates continuously. So when you say society is feminizing men, while it is the case that maybe femininity in men has been a trend more so than any time in history, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're pushing that. That just means that that aspect of masculinity and femininity is being pushed.
Isn't that what it is?
More exposed. Well, okay.
When it's trending, it's people are putting that out there. That's what it is.
When people pressure you to do that, that's toxic in and of itself. When you feel like you can't be somebody who you want to be and you're not hurting anybody, then somebody who's making you feel bad for doing something that's not hurting anybody, that's generally toxic. And when that's true, I would agree with you. Is the toxic trait of portraying men as more feminine when they don't want to be increasing? Yes. Is the reason for this because we want men to be more feminine in general? No, I wouldn't say so. I would say that the reason for that is just because it's getting more exposure in general. Everything's getting more exposure in general. Femininity, masculinity, random kinks, random expectations. Like it's homosexuality is getting more exposure, more representation.
Been out there.
That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the expectation we have on society. It's an expectation that has had more exposure in recent years that hasn't had in the past, which I think is actually a sign of transition as opposed to decline in society.
Okay, that's fair. Another conversation I wanted to have was another conversation between men and women was how men and women are equals. I know a lot of people like to say that men are above women, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think we're equals, but we're not the same. Let me explain. So I was watching a show, Grand Army, on Netflix, right? And this example just happened to pop in my head, but there's this example where there's this one of the leading actresses in the series. She has her three best friends are all boys, all teenage boys. And they're in this taxi, and one of the boys, his name is Tim. He really, really likes her, and she likes him to some degree. Mm-hmm. But she's being super flirtatious with the two other men, and Tim doesn't like that because he's like, why the hell are you doing this? Like, you know how I feel about you, and vice versa. But she was basically implying that, guys can do this too, so I'm going to do it in front of you the same way you did it to me, because he did that to her like a week ago or something prior in the show. And so as she was being super flirtatious with two of her friends, they were liking it, and they were all making out and stuff. Everyone except Tim, of course. And then so the boys started going a little bit too far, and she wanted to stop, but at that point it was kind of too late, and so they kept going. And that was unfortunate for her because they took advantage of her. And she initiated it. But then I was thinking like, what if she was a guy and the roles were reversed? I feel like generally speaking, it would have been more accepted for so she felt like she got raped like the next day, and it was not the same when she was talking to her friends, her boyfriends.
Yeah, and she did.
Yeah, she did. She tried to be cool and normal like her guy friends. Like it was all cool and normal with them.
There's a cat just on the table.
Just joined the
that's
podcast.
very strange. This is one of my cats.
Yeah.
Not my cat necessarily. We have cats, and they're around, and they're wonderful.
I wanted to say,
right now.
I feel like if the roles were reversed, the probability for a guy being angry about the situation would have been significantly lower than what it was with her. Because like if a girl takes advantage of a guy, he's probably going to like that more so than anything. And there might be obviously a few percentage of men that doesn't like it. But I feel like in that regard, men and women aren't the same.
Yeah, Bryson. Beautiful. Fantastic. Woo! The cat just applauded his statement.
Oh, I thought that was you. I was like, wow.
That was not me. The cat felt an urge.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that I feel like men and women are like, it's like they go with each other yin and yang, but when we talk about like we're the same, we're not the same.
No, I don't think, realistically speaking, I don't think anyone thinks they're the same necessarily. I think,
but there are people who think that, Javid.
of course, but I'm not arguing extremes. I'm arguing platforms. And in terms of platforms, the feminist platform, which I'm going to argue for, isn't that men and women are the same. I don't think that's ever been true in history.
But that's what I'm saying. People say this type of shit, Javid.
Men and women are diverse. And that's, I think, the idea. Men and women have the idea of a man and a woman is broad. It's like you can have so many definitions of that.
Well, human beings are complex.
Yeah, human beings are complex.
That's just
so in that
that's a human thing.
If a man was put into that situation, I don't think that's a fair statement.
You don't think so?
That woman had circumstances that were okay. For example,
she initiated it.
She
initiated this.
She didn't initiate rape. She initiated a certain experience that she wanted to have, and so do men. Men initiate experiences all the time, and that goes positive or negative. And my point is, I don't think it's fair. For example, when I say the N-word, I know this is such like a huge... What
is going on here, you guys? What is going on here?
When I say the N-word and Bryson says the N-word, if I were to say it, it'd be wrong. I do not say it. I am careful not to say it. Not that I feel the urge to say it constantly, but
some
more
people do. Some white people do. Yeah.
I find that so funny.
Yeah,
it's like it's just a word. You can say it whenever you fucking want. It's not a matter of what you can and cannot do.
Anyone could say the word. But
you're allowed. There's nothing illegal about it. But
you just gotta the consequences that come with that,
which are the black community and other people in who are allies of the community just won't want to be around you as much, and you're just gonna have to accept that. If you say it in your car and nobody, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? It's like, who the fuck cares? Nobody cares. Nobody's around. I don't really care what you say in the privacy of your own home. But if it gets out there, then you're on a public platform and it matters. And then that same sense, I don't think. It's fair to conflate the experiences of a man and a woman in the same scenario. There's a lot of context to that. It's not just a gender issue. There's also how that woman was raised, how the expectations that were put on her, the expectations that were put on a man. Not just any man, that specific man who had a specific series of actions and expectations put on them, and they perpetuated or declined that series of actions and expectations. So to say that it's a man-woman issue, I feel like is maybe a bit reductionistic. Like it's a bat.
I was just saying that definitely if the roles were reversed, men, they would not have taken... Okay, so how she felt after, most men wouldn't have felt like that. Like, I know that.
You're saying on average, like a statistic, right?
Like, generally speaking, most men would not have felt like the way that she felt like she got taken advantage of over something that she started.
Yeah, and she did. She did.
It's like most guys would have been like, it happened. And if anything, they would have took pride in it. So it's like, I know that for a fact.
I know several individuals who are men, who identify as men and present as men, who would not be comfortable being taken advantage of by people that they were not interested in. Now, I will agree.
No, they were interested in each other.
the
they were
female,
making out and really.
She was interested in that action. She was not interested in what came after.
What can you expect from when you're feeling on a man and kissing him? Obviously, come on, what comes next? Obviously.
Nothing if you don't want it. If you don't want anything to come next, nothing comes next.
Right. No, you're right.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on blast. I'm saying that in terms of...
I don't feel like I'm being put on blast at all.
I'm glad. What I'm saying is in terms of expectation... Okay, to bring this back to the original topic of discussion, toxic masculinity.
Well, it's kind of like two...
It's two-sided.
Yeah,
what are the differences between men and women, and what is toxic masculinity? The idea isn't that masculinity is toxic in and of itself, and I've said that, and you've said that, in fact. But the idea that maybe masculinity is being put on trial in society,
that's what
I'm not going to disagree with that. I do think that's probably the case. I think that a lot of people in modern society do conflate certain masculine traits with toxicity. The only unfortunate fact of that is it's because typically they are.
No, right. Some are. And there's even toxic femininity too, though. That's just not talked about as much, obviously, because I feel like when we start talking about men and women, obviously men are going to be attacked because they're stronger. So yeah. And then there's been a lot of toxic men that have done things, which is true. Like that's all very true. Men abusing their power, like what's his name, Harvey Weinstein. Like situations, definitely toxic people that. R. Kelly, like there's definitely some toxic men out there. I'm not saying that, but I just feel like they're definitely feminizing men as a whole. Yeah,
but feminizing men as a whole, softening them, I can't agree with. I think that
if you're feminizing them, you're softening them, though. But you just said you agreed with that.
I agree that masculinity is being put on trial in today's society. I do think that people who portray certain masculine traits are being...
Wouldn't you say that's feminizing them?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I think that that's a value that is being more represented in society, and that means that it is more of an expectation, but that is fair. Of course that's fair. We've also been putting those same expectations on black people, on women, on we've been putting so many crazy standards on people that some group of people getting more of a voice saying, hey, I like more feminine guys. I don't think that's a crime. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's just a change in society. And yes, that might negatively affect people. And I'm not even disagreeing with that fact. It does negatively affect certain people, but not as much as hyper toxic masculinity has negatively affected people. And that's what I consider to be toxic masculinity.
Okay, yeah, we definitely do put a label on everything now. And I've been a product of that because I've came up with the term teenagerism.
Yeah, we did.
And if you've been watching any of our shows, like that's something that I coined, a few episodes
did coin. Ago. It's a good term. I like that.
Yeah,
term.
It makes sense too. Would you care to define it? I coined it and I can't even define it, but you can define it way better than me.
I want to try to define it. It's literally, okay, so it happens when teenagers feel negatively about or change their beliefs, not based off of what they feel or experience, but based off of what other people tell them.
Exactly. That's teenagerism. Every time he gets it.
The only reason it's teenager specific, it can happen to anyone, but it generally happens the most when you're a teenager.
Exactly. So
where you change your beliefs not because you actually believe it or not because you actually experience it, but because somebody else told you.
And I got this from Euphoria. Because I'm like, yo,
amazing show, which does represent toxic masculinity.
Yes, it does. Well. But I did want to say, yes, we have a label on everything today in 2020, almost 2021, because we're going to be in 2021. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone who's out there. I almost feel like that's sort of like a negative thing in a way.
What do you mean?
Like, always labeling something. What, ageism, teenage, like everything is a ism or is this and it's that. Like, why can't something just be?
I agree that
I feel like when you label something, that sort of changes it in a way. Like, yes, it's good to have labels, I guess, but everything has a label.
There's this dichotomy that's paradoxical, that it's called prescription, not description, or description, not prescription. So I think that in terms of...
What does that mean?
So do you know when you're prescribed something, right, when you're given something and you're told this is how things work if you're in this condition, versus describing something like, this is how it is. I don't care how you feel about it, but that's how it is. I would argue that in today's society, that's probably one of the biggest difficulties we have with this, with assessing something properly. So what I mean by that is somebody describes certain toxic traits of masculinity.
Okay.
Then somebody portrays something that seems similar but isn't and isn't toxic, and then I, as just some idiot maybe, prescribes that to you. I say that's toxic. I'm prescribing that to you not because that's actually a realistic assessment of what you are, but because I feel like that's a realistic assessment of what you are.
Like it.
Instead of testing it out. I do agree that that is something we struggle with as a society right now. But again, I don't think that's because we're degrading. I think that's because we're transitioning into a better understanding of how things are.
Always trying to learn.
The change we're experiencing as a society is ludicrous. Is we're changing so fucking fast and understanding things at such a rapid rate that there's no real correspondence between all of us. So
it's almost kind of scary.
You were just talking about
it's almost kind of scary, and everything's trending now, and everything's just moving too fast.
It is moving too fast.
Everything's moving way too fast.
Too fast. I'm not one to damper on progress. I consider myself a proponent of progress, but in terms of how well we can coordinate this, I don't think it's been effective. For example, Bryson was just talking about the other day, the Big Bang. That seems like you're just told that as a kid, that's the beginning of the universe, and then nothing. You're not given any context. It's just a story you're told, and then it keeps going. I believe it personally. I do, and I've tried to research it as best as I can, but I'm not a scientific expert. And it is a story that I just believe. And
I don't even think they can explain. I mean, they could probably explain it, but I don't know. I feel like, do they really believe what they're... I feel like they've lied to themselves to where they believe what they're actually saying.
I can't agree with that.
I just feel like it cannot... How can you make sense of something that doesn't make sense? And that's essentially what they've done. You have these smart people with PhDs who can use big words and knows how to structure their sentences, and they could... It sounds believable. You're like, huh, okay, he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. That's what I think, personally.
I would have to say that there are people way smarter than us. We're not experts in any means.
We always say that.
It's a fact. We're not
it's a fact, yeah.
Anything we say is up to interpretation. But the point is, I don't know. I think smart people are smart, and I think they work really hard at being smart. And
right, but when you talk about something like the beginning of existence, and no one today was alive at that point.
But they have evidence for it. They have like cosmic rays, and they have carbon dating, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. And yes, if you accept it, it is a story. You are accepting it as a story because you don't know everything. And in that same sense, I would argue that masculinity as an idea has been a story. Femininity, what makes a man and what makes a woman, is a story. Does it have true elements in it? Yes, of course. And are there more things we could learn about it? Absolutely, and we should. But to say that we know what defines a man and what defines a woman, I don't think that's realistic. I think humans are so ridiculously complicated.
Complex. I think we can say to each as individual, we know what we would like in a woman or a man.
Right.
You can say, I would want this in a man, or I'd want this in a woman. But to say what makes up a man and what makes up a woman is complicated. Is that what you're saying?
It is. More than that, when you say, I know what I like in a woman, you know what you like in an American woman that you've been raised having a standard of. And that...
Wait. Why is it just an American woman?
Because you haven't been to Africa. African women are very different.
You can still... You don't have to be there to be like, yo, I'm obsessed with African women or Middle Eastern women, or people have their things.
But in the same way that somebody's like, oh man, I love African American culture. I love black people, and I feel like I relate, when you haven't been accepted by... But they might actually do
like black people. Now we're talking about acceptance.
Yeah, we are.
We're just talking about what you like. Like, I don't have to like foreign women. I don't have to be in a foreign country to like foreign women.
What I'm arguing is that you were raised with certain lenses, and those lenses aren't ubiquitous. They are not...
Yeah, we're all raised with lenses. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that same sense, I don't think women are the same across the world. I don't think any one woman is the same.
Different countries, different cultures, different upbringing. But I feel like that's dope as hell, though.
It is. Yeah. And because of that, men deserve that same kind of diversity. Like, a man is like, I kind of want to wear a dress. I think that's fine.
And in some other culture, that might be the case. But I haven't seen that. I mean, well... I was going to say America. Scotland too? See, I didn't know that.
Well, it's different. It's always different. In Scotland, they wore kilts, which is effective for warfare. I guess you could
sum that up to say that men and women in different cultures, there's probably a different what am I looking for? Masculinity is probably defined differently in another country than it is in America.
Absolutely. I would, 100%.
And same with femininity.
So I guess if we had to encapsulate everything we're saying, it's to the end. Okay, let me encapsulate what I'm saying. You kind of.
Okay.
I'm saying that toxic masculinity, while it is real, and I think that when you define your masculinity through toxicity, that is a real thing that America likes to perpetuate and likes to encourage in society. That doesn't mean that masculinity, as you understand it, is necessarily toxic. And in that same sense, there is toxic femininity. And toxic femininity, while not nearly as incredibly destructive as toxic men have been, because of the
Maybe it just hasn't been in the forefront, though. There's some toxic ass women out there.
Of course.
But I was saying that men obviously have been at the forefront of it.
Yeah, and they have. And that I really do think that's all feminists really argue. Real, like the general populace of feminists. I'm not talking about the extremists, and I'm not talking about the people. And, you might disagree with what an extreme feminist is or not. But my point is, I don't think realistically anyone feels like, oh, all men are terrible, all men are toxic, no men are, or no women are toxic.
But some are, though. You're talking about it from a sane person. These people aren't sane.
Of course,
I've spoken to these people.
I talk to sane people. I usually talk to sane people. I don't talk to crazy people. And when I do talk to crazy people, I identify them as such.
Oh, I was going to say, I just stopped talking to them. Sometimes, but I usually hear them out just to hear it because I'm like, okay, this is interesting.
It's good content. We're going to have crazy people on this podcast. Right. We might be crazy people. I don't know.
What if we are?
I hope so.
I was going to say, so for me, I just think that, again, society is feminizing masculinity. Yes, there is toxic femininity and toxic masculinity. I just think that men are being softened, and I don't necessarily agree with that. But yeah, I'm gonna end it with saying that on my side.
That's fair.
That's fair.
And on my side, I'm gonna argue that women have never been soft in history, and that men are being more. The value.
You said women have never been soft in history?
Kidding me? Have you heard?
No, maybe you're right. Actually,
do you know who Sojourner Truth is?
Who's that?
So when
wait. We say that as if there's something wrong with being. Or you say that as if there's something wrong with being soft.
Being soft is a trait that can be attributed to both men and women.
Though.
There is strength in both men and women.
Right. Okay. But I feel like there's strength in being soft. I feel like you said that as if it was like a negative thing.
I'm sorry. What I mean is that softness is an attribute that can be applied to anybody, and is an attribute.
See how I cleared that up?
Thank you, Bryson. You're wonderful. You're amazing. My point is, do you know who Sojourner Truth is?
Nah, tell me.
Sojourner Truth was a suffragette. She was a person who fought for women's rights to vote, and she wrote she's white, right?
She's black. Oh, wow. Okay, never mind.
And she was a slave, I think. And she was freed. And she wrote I don't know if it's a poem or a speech, but she said, am I not a woman? And men said that women weren't allowed to vote because they weren't strong enough. They couldn't handle the harshness and responsibility of voting because it was just too strong. Like men were rational and poised and had very
especially given the time period.
Yeah. She wrote the poem, Am I Not a Woman? And she was a slave. She lost her children. She went through so much that no white man really had gone through. And she said, am I not a woman? If I'm so soft, why did I go through these experiences? Why am I capable of these things?
It's really deep.
It was really deep. One of my favorite.
Wow.
I want to call it a poem. And to that end, I want to say that softness isn't a weakness. It's a strength that men and women can have in abundance and always have. And women have always gone through probably some of the harshest I mean, imagine being raped. Do you know how many women are raped compared to men?
Oh, I already know. It's
a disgusting proportion, and it's really terrible. And that's what I call toxic masculinity.
It would be definitely toxic masculinity.
Yeah, it's really fucked up.
I think we should end it on that note.
Bryson's a wonderful individual, and I would hope that I am too. This is a discussion that we made because we had opinions about things, but that doesn't mean that we don't respect your opinion. So
Right.
comment down below and say what you think about what we said. And I promise we're not gonna fucking trash and be like, you're fucking idiot. What are you talking about?
That's not the community here.
That's not the community. We're probably wrong about most things we say. Please tell us if we are. And with that, I think we're good. Talk to Ralph. He has definitely some opinions that he didn't share on this podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Later, you guys.
See ya.